There is a moment in every great nation's history when it stands at a crossroads. One road leads to hesitation, apology, and slow decline. The other road leads to confidence, decisiveness, and strength. And what we are witnessing right now in America is the direct result of which road gets chosen. When America decides to be bold, when it stops apologizing for its power and starts using it with purpose, the results speak for themselves. Economies shift, allies pay attention, adversaries back down, and the American people, the working families, the business owners, the veterans, the everyday citizens who built this country with their hands and their sacrifice, they feel it. They feel the difference between a nation that leads and a nation that retreats. Tonight, we are going to show you exactly what boldness looks like in action, what it produces, and why the people who are most afraid of a bold America are the ones who have been benefiting from a weak one. Stay right there because this conversation is one you need to hear from start to finish. Welcome to Foxy Global News, the channel that delivers straight talk, real analysis, and the stories that matter to Americans who love this country and want the truth without the spin. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications so you never miss a single update. We cover the stories that others shy away from, and we cover them the way they deserve to be covered, directly, honestly, and without fear. Now, let us get into tonight's conversation. Sean Hannity has been one of the most consistent voices in American media when it comes to making the case for American strength and boldness. And what he has been saying for years is no longer just commentary. It is being proven out in real time by real results. The argument is straightforward. When America projects strength, when its leadership is willing to make tough calls, stand firm under pressure, and prioritize the interests of the American people over the approval of international institutions and foreign critics, good things happen. Not just for America, but for the world. Because a strong America is a stabilizing force. A weak America creates vacuums, and history has shown us repeatedly and painfully what fills those vacuums. Let us start with the economy, because that is where bold policy decisions show up first, and most visibly in the lives of ordinary Americans. When the government takes a strong stance on trade, when it pushes back against countries that have been taking advantage of American markets for decades, the immediate reaction from the media and from certain political quarters is always alarm. They say it will cause chaos. They say markets will collapse. They say America cannot afford to be aggressive on trade. And then what happens? Negotiations begin. Deals get made. Companies that had moved manufacturing overseas start looking at America again. Jobs that were written off as permanently gone start coming back. Not because of magic, but because when America is bold enough to say we will not keep accepting arrangements that hurt our workers, the other side has to listen. This is exactly what Hannity has been pointing to. The willingness to use American leverage, economic, diplomatic, and strategic, is not recklessness. It is long overdue correction. For too long, American negotiators walked into rooms with the goal of being liked rather than the goal of winning for the American people. Bold leadership changes that dynamic entirely. It walks into the room knowing what America brings to the table and refusing to leave without getting fair value in return. Look at what happens on the world stage when America projects military and diplomatic confidence. Adversaries who had grown comfortable testing American resolve suddenly become more cautious. The calculus changes when the person across the table believes that America means what it says and will follow through on what it commits to. Hannity has made this point repeatedly, and it is not partisan politics, it is basic geopolitics. Deterrence works. It has always worked. And deterrence requires a credible, confident, unapologetic display of American strength and will. When America was perceived as reluctant to act, when its foreign policy was characterized by red lines that meant nothing and apology tours that confused allies and emboldened enemies, the world became more dangerous. Conflicts that might have been prevented escalated. Regimes that should have been contained expanded. And American credibility, the single most valuable asset in global diplomacy, was spent down to nearly nothing. Bold America rebuilds that credibility. It does so not through rhetoric alone, but through action, through consistency, through following through on what it says and standing by the commitments it makes to its partners. Now let us talk about what boldness looks like domestically, because this is where it matters most to the people watching tonight. A bold America secures its borders. Not because Americans are afraid of the world, but because every sovereign nation has both the right and the responsibility to control who enters and under what conditions. For years, the argument against serious border enforcement was that it was cruel, that it was un-American, that the compassionate choice was open access. What that policy actually produced was chaos, exploitation of vulnerable people by criminal networks, pressure on communities that were not resourced to absorb the influx, and a fundamental undermining of the rule of law. Bold leadership looks at that situation and says, enough. It implements enforcement, it restores order, and the results? Fewer crossings, dismantled smuggling networks, communities that can actually plan and function, prove the point. A bold America also takes energy seriously. For years, there was a concerted push to move away from American energy production in the name of international agreements and climate commitments that other major nations were not actually honoring. The result was higher energy prices for American families, greater dependence on foreign sources, and a weakening of a sector that employs millions of Americans and underpins the entire economy. Bold leadership reverses that. It says American energy, American production, American workers. And almost immediately, prices respond. Supply responds. The economy breathes again. Hannity has been making this case for a long time, and the data backs it up every time it is actually tried. There is also something critically important about the relationship between bold leadership and national morale. Nations, like people, respond to confidence. When leadership communicates that America is capable, that its best days are ahead, that the problems the country faces are solvable, and that the government is serious about solving them, citizens respond. Investment goes up, hiring goes up, consumer confidence goes up. There is a psychological dimension to strong governance that is very real and very measurable. Compare that to an environment where leadership constantly signals doubt, where every policy is accompanied by apologies and caveats, where the national narrative is one of guilt and limitation. That environment produces exactly the kind of stagnation and division we have seen in periods when boldness was absent. The critics of this approach always have the same playbook. They call it dangerous. They call it isolationist. They say it alienates allies and destroys relationships. But look at what actually happens when America is bold. Allies do not abandon a strong America. They respect it. They align with it. The relationships that matter in international affairs are built on respect and mutual interest, not on the performance of agreeableness. When America is strong, when it keeps its commitments and enforces its red lines, allies feel more secure, not less. They know that the American umbrella means something. What Hannity is really getting at when he talks about boldness is something deeper than just policy. It is a philosophy of national self-belief. It is the conviction that America is not a problem to be managed, but a force for good to be unleashed. That the American people, when freed from excessive regulation, when given fair trade conditions, when protected by serious border enforcement, when powered by their own energy resources, are capable of extraordinary things. History proves this beyond any reasonable doubt. Every period of American greatness has been characterized by exactly this kind of confidence and forward momentum. The opposition to boldness is not really about the policies themselves. It is about power. A bold, self-sufficient, economically strong, and diplomatically credible America is an America that is harder to manipulate. It is harder to pressure into bad deals. It is harder to guilt into one-sided commitments. The loudest voices against American boldness tend to be those who benefit most from American weakness, whether that is foreign governments that enjoy favorable imbalances, international organizations that wield influence over a compliant America, or domestic interests that have built their business models on the assumption that American workers and American communities will keep accepting less than they deserve. Tonight's conversation is really an invitation to think clearly about what you want from your country. Do you want a nation that asks permission before acting in its own interests? Or do you want a nation that knows its worth, defends its people, and leads from a position of strength? The answer should not be complicated. And for the millions of Americans who are watching their country make bold choices right now and seeing real results in their lives, their communities, and their country's standing in the world, the answer is already clear. This is what happens when America is willing to be bold. It works. It always has. And it always will, as long as the American people have the courage to demand it from their leaders and to reject the voices that would rather see America small, apologetic, and manageable. Thank you for watching Foxy Global News. If this conversation resonated with you, please give this video a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one, and your perspective matters to this community. Subscribe if you have not already, because we have a lot more coming that you will not want to miss. Stay bold, stay informed, and we will see you in the next one.